And good day to you folks out there in video land. I'm here in Albuquerque with my dear wife, Susan, and my dear cousin, Stephen Sandner. And that's my mother's name, is her maiden name was Margaret Sandner. This is Steve is the spawn of my godfather and moral director, Walter Sandner. And uh, when I was first born, Wally and Erica, Steve's mom, were living together along with Emil, Steve's maternal grandfather, and his uncle Bill Bierendorf, uh, Erica's brother. Erica is his mother, and in a weird set of circumstances, poor Erica was trapped as an American citizen in Germany during World War II. And she came over post war, and Wally and her got married. And soon thereafter, I don't think they lived that long at Oma and Opa's boarding house where my mother was raised. And although mom was born the sharecropper's daughter on a farm on Lawrence and Mannheim, right across from O'Hare Field. And um, the Sanders are a very uh, musically best bunch. I'm not sure if it came from Grandpa Sandner or the Nagel side. We have one cousin who plays with the Boston Pops, second violin, uh, and numerous other scattered musicians. His mother uh, was music teacher of the year in the state of Illinois, my godmother, Louise Honer. And so there you go, a little background on the Sanders. I left off Grandpere going to the war in France, and he his rank was wagon master. He was in the quartermaster corps and delivered supplies to the front lines, both in horse drawn vehicles and in trucks. As the war uh, waged on, there were more and more vehicles in France. Grandpa spent quite a bit of time at Verdun, where 800,000 men died, and he was gassed, and he did have a oh lung problem throughout his life. Uh, so old Warner Eyre was quite the character. He got out of the war, and my maternal grandmother's name was Catherine Roney. And Catherine lost a man that she loved, maybe a fiance, I'm not sure, in the First World War, and she married Warner on the rebound. He was a project waiting to uh, be supervised. Grandpa's one of his favorite adages was, "If it don't get done today, it'll get done tomorrow." Not a man of high ambition. He cultivated 40 acres of clover, and on his Social Security, and maybe he got a medical pension, I'm not even sure of that, he was able to have a life. Grandpa picked up when I went out there and stayed with him. It was the first time I ever had frog legs. Grandpa had been to France and he was never the same. He enjoyed fancy cooking and uh, would try to do it on his own. And uh, in his old marginal house, he'd struggle along. It had an oil burner in the living room, and he slept in there. And then in the 50s, they built an addition on, and Roy got a bedroom and kind of a big empty room, which was a general catch all of all sorts of things. My exposure to Grandpa was uh, pretty amazing. Buffalo Bill had bought him a drink before he went to the First World War, and he was like living history, running a stagecoach stop east of Cody. He just had broader exposure. All these exotic people would come through his little world. Grandma's people, the Ronies, were in the Dakotas, and Grandma graduated from Hope College there. I think it was only a 2 year teacher's college at that time before the First World War. And I think she taught a little. She was president of the school board, was one of the better educated women in that part of Wyoming during those years. Uh, the Ronies were a pretty good sized family. I think there were 6 or 8. I got the photo behind me here. And the two that I knew the best were Ernest and Adam, and Aunt Frances, of course, who married Glenn Penny Johnson. There's the the Roni tribe. Some of them I don't even think I met, or I met them just as I was a child. They came and started the dairy in Powell, where Grandpa's livery stable was. The family did. And Frances married Glenn Penny Johnson, uh, a sheep herder guy, and they spent their honeymoon in a sheep wagon up in outside of Sheridan in the Bighorn Mountains over there. And we still have the notice, I think, somewhere in Mom's stuff left of Penny's marriage announcement, and it's written in quite a humorous way. Penny came from a big family, and their oldest daughter was had artistic talent and uh, lived at our house for a year or two while she was going to the Art Institute in Chicago. And these were the years that I was 10 to 12, and I was very taken by the art world, although I never did find my art form until decades later when I went into the tree business and got to design gardens and help people in the design process of making a garden in their own yard. I always preferred to um, have people design their own gardens and then me supply the technical expertise of how to site the plants. Siting plants is a very difficult science and it's imperfect. And even my mentors tended to overplant and let the plants grow together. They plant them too close. All of us. It's an innate nature of wanting to, of being a collector and then trying to place as many of the collection pieces in your world in life. So uh, years later, I would bump into Diana at Diana's Grocery, which was literally a grocery store at that time with a small restaurant behind, kind of a restaurant deli in the Greek part of town. And I bumped into Diana there, and she was talking about moving to the Southwest and starting a school out there with her husband Mel Johnson, of the same name, Johnson, and she was a Johnson and Johnson. And I hooked up with them and started talking to them about their dreams, and that'll come later in the story. But uh, things weave and reweave through our lives, and Diana was one that I remember going to the Art Institute in Chicago, and my first fixation was on Kandinsky, on a painting called Troika, when I was just a kid, and I loved art and was interested in the abstract form of modern art. I really didn't understand it, but there was enough realism in that painting to grab me a little. So I was a Catholic boy. I went to the Catholic schools for 13 years. I got a pretty good education, I would say. I was more motivated as a child than I was in my high school years, where I was what I would call a young adult. Throughout my life, my father would pour responsibility to me. I It was about this time when I was 10 or 12 that he let me have credit cards for anywhere that he had them. He'd let me charge there, and his only whisper was, just make sure you need it, putting the pressure on me to determine whether I really needed something or not. I thought it was pretty good parenting because it kept me a frugal person throughout my life. And I, uh, I'm wearing one of my wife's $2 shirts and et cetera, et cetera. There she is laughing in the background. She's always taken good care of me and known that I never cared about how I projected myself. And even looking into the screen here, into the uh, monitor, uh, it's the most I've looked at myself in decades. I tend not to look at myself. I shave in the shower blindly and uh, don't worry about what my image is. My visual image. I'm more concerned about how I project myself and whether I can find things that I share with people. That's one of my life's blessings, is being able to bond with a lot of people by learning what their interest pattern is and then going for it. So through my years and growing up, and when I was 5, my folks moved out of the boarding house, the familial boarding house, and Dad built a shell of a house on Drexel in LaGrange. And he made a love room for me of knotty pine, where he built me a knotty pine desk, and it had a window seat to kneel and look out the window from. And soon thereafter, I came down with nephritis, a terrible kidney infection disease that was uh, almost lethal for me, and I was down at Children's Memorial Hospital, and I caught the measles. And we had a Dr. Newman was my pediatrician, and my folks took me home, and then every day, old Doc Newman, who lived in Hinsdale, Illinois, an adjoining town to LaGrange, would come by and what looked like a 6-inch needle would draw blood from me. It could well have been a 6-inch needle. They had huge syringes in those days. And I quickly healed, although I looked like I came out of the concentration camps by the look of me. As I tried to ride my first bicycle, and my beloved cousin Joni helped me learn to ride my two-wheeler, and I soon healed up and rode my bike to kindergarten, where I was busted by the nuns. You weren't allowed to ride your bike to kindergarten. Little did I know, I had a block and a half down from the Catholic school was the Nago building. My grandmother's maternal name, the great grandma's name was Perlinger, and uh, mom and grandma worked at the turkey pot pie factory there. And so then when I was done with school, if Oma wasn't waiting for me, the great grandma at our house on Drexel, I'd go over uh, to the Nego building and hang out. It was a phenomenal place, the largest commercial building in town. Grandma's brothers had run the IGA in LaGrange for years, and then sold that and bought this big commercial building and put a locker plant in there. After the war, there weren't still a lot of freezers, and people would buy a quarter or a half of beef and put it into a locker plant, a storage frozen container thing. And one of my first jobs was sweeping up at the butcher shop that was part of the locker plant. And uh, I'd hang out there, and when the rich ladies come in and they didn't want to put on literally horsehair coats that the guys had to go into this sub-zero locker facility. Sometimes the rich ladies didn't want to go in, and so they'd send me in to pull their chops or steaks, and I'd come out and they'd flip me a dime or a quarter. But my real pay was all the popsicles and ice cream bars I could eat out of the freezer. And a good time was had by all. The Nagel boys were a unique bunch. They came and they farmed on Mannheim Road, Route 45, a major north-south road, uh, ran through. Uh, I'm not sure what town Uncle Matt's farm was in. I think it was Schiller Park, though, if I'm not mistaken. And poor Joni had to live with a whorehouse literally right across the street. There was a bar with cabins, tourist cabins, that got a lot of tourists through them every night. And just a little bizarre note in our exposure and upbringing of the earthiness of Chicago. It was all there. Anything you wanted at Alice's restaurant, you could uh, uh, be exposed. Years later, when I was in my upper teens, uh, I rendezvoused with my friend Dart in we both worked till 2 o'clock, me on the loading docks and him at Electromotive, where they built most of the world's locomotives in LaGrange, Illinois. And I was working Cicero Avenue, and we'd rendezvous there after our jobs got out at 2 a.m. in this uh, town that was predominantly owned and controlled by the mob. And uh, there was whatever you wanted was available. Luckily, we were good guys and I wasn't into whoremongering or too much or experimented as a young buck, but not the beautiful thing. Uh, so I don't know what time it is here. Am I? I think I'm into 12 minutes. I'll pick this up with going to high school and
How about whoremongering?
Whoremongering, more whoremongering.
We want more of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
naked dancing girls. This one place, the guy really loved us,
No.
and
Yes.
we would work the guys on expense accounts for drinks. We were terrible. We'd go in there later at night sober, and the guys would be there and drunk as a skunk, fondling the young meat in the places, and then we'd work them for drinks. We didn't care about the women, we cared about the alcohol. So God bless you, kids, and have more fun. Live a full life. God bless you. Bye.